Brody, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on Primetime. We appreciate you. And, man, for you, I know you're there, right? You're in the heart of it. You're covering the A's. You're the studio host. You know the what the team means to the city and to the fan base, man. What is this whole few, I guess, months and this whole song and dance been with the A's? How has this been for you and the fan base?
Well, thanks for having me on. First off, I broke down in tears on Wednesday in the middle of the show, so there's that. But in all reality, it's been tough. It's been a tough couple years. We knew the Las Vegas process would play out. I don't think anybody expected, though, these last 2 months would go as fast as they did. I mean, the A's literally went from having nothing brewing down there publicly, no site, no real conversations. Everything was rumors and speculation. And then all of a sudden you go from one site to the next to the very last day possible for language to be submitted to legislature. They pass it in 10 days. I mean, it accelerated through the roof. And I think there's two ways to look at it. Number one, it feels completely surreal because baseball teams just don't move. I mean, it's happened a total of once in the last 51 years. But also, it doesn't make sense in a lot of different ways. The 9-acre site down there, the fact that they're going to have to play in a temporary city probably for a couple years, the plan and the projection down there to sell out every game for 30 straight years. I mean, who does that in Major League Baseball? Right. So it's just a lot of things. And what Manfred said, I could go on, but it's surreal. But a lot of it just still does not make sense here in Oakland.
Brody, thanks for joining us. One, I just want to say, real men cry, so don't worry about that.
I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with it.
Last week, the fans held a reverse boycott where 27,000 people showed up to the stadium, which is about 3 times as many that usually show up this season at least. For you, seeing that happen, how did that make you feel, even though that same day you found out that for sure the team was going to probably move to Las Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, it was I was in the studio, which unfortunately is, my everyday job. But I say unfortunately my job, I just would rather have been out there in person to soak that in. But I could tell, I mean, it translated through the television screen, just how invested the crowd was. They said 27,000. I heard that at some point they stopped even scanning tickets. It could have been well over 30,000. The total amount doesn't really matter in reverse, but the way that they handled themselves, the message they sent, how they came in unison with a message. I mean, if their point was to get a message across, the message was delivered, no doubt. Whether it was received by Nevada, obviously it was not, but I think it was more aimed at Major League Baseball. And I guess we'll find out if that message was received, acknowledged, or anything. But I have to say, June 13th, I mean, it was a day and a reverse boycott. Who's ever even heard of that before? It was an experience like no other.
It was awesome. I'll tell you that. Again, Brody Brazil is our guest here on Primetime on ESPN Radio on the ESPN app. And, Brody, I mentioned before, I'm originally from the Bay Area. Love the A's. That is my team. Just hate what has gone on with the A's and as far as the product that they've been putting out there on the field the past, I don't know, feels like a decade now at this point, where it's just not keeping the stars at home, not doing any of that, just, selling off one guy and bringing in another guys for AAA and all of that. It feels like this ownership has just robbed the fan base there. And that's what I really hate about this situation the most. Is that how the overall feeling of the fans are? It's really the ownership and Fisher that they're really just so angry at?
Well, I mean, people point to the attendance, and it is what it is. But why do you think it is that way? What is the reason for low attendance in Oakland? People in Las Vegas will tell you, well, they've always struggled with attendance in Oakland, and that is not true at all. First off, you look across Major League Baseball, a couple things. 3 teams have yet to ever award a $100 million player contract. Those 3 teams are the Oakland A's, the Kansas City Royals, and the Chicago White Sox. But there's only one team that's yet to ever have a $100 million payroll for one single season. That is the Oakland Athletics. The biggest contract they've ever handed out, $66 million, I think over 6 years back in 2004 for Eric Chavez. That's it. So it's not just a matter of contracts, though. It's all the players that you had that you didn't re-sign. I guess maybe that is about contracts. It's not number one, 2 things here. It's not about not going out and seeking out players. But it's also about not keeping the players that this franchise works so hard and the talent to identify and come up through the system. They make their mark. They're a Matt Chapman. They're a Matt Olson, a Sean Murphy, a Marcus Semien. I could go on, and all of a sudden they're playing on different teams. So that in addition to maybe the facility frustration of the aging Coliseum, those two things combined have put the attendance to the several thousand a night across the last decade or two.
You mentioned the video. Well, I guess we mentioned a video that was posted this week where you're talking about how you feel about the team leaving. And one of the things that kind of struck me was you saying that in 10 years you won't see any kids walking around in Oakland A's hats. You compared it to the Expos and that they no longer exist. I guess, why did that single point, I guess, touch you the most? It seemed like you got the most emotional about that point. Why did that hit you so close?
Because I'm from the East Bay. I'm 42 years old. I've spent all my life here in the Bay Area. And granted, I am a citizen of the Bay, so I recognize and I respect all of the teams. But the A's were special to me. When I was 8 years old, they won the World Series and swept the Giants. The Battle of the Bay was a big deal. The Bash brothers and Ricky and Dennis Eckersley, Dave Stewart. So I was very impressionable back then, and it stuck with me for my entire life. And I just think it's the legacy that so many generations have passed on. Me and my friends, our parents, went to A's games. They taught you about, you grew up learning baseball at the Coliseum. It was a passed on thing. And so what I brought up the other day was I literally, this happened earlier in the afternoon. I was with my son at a, I don't know what you call it, like an outdoor shopping center type area, a city center area. And he was just kind of running around. I saw a different kid running around wearing an A's hat. And it struck me in that moment, although in that moment with him, I was so busy, I was not really thinking about it. But as the day went on, it really struck me that you're not going to see that much more around Oakland, around the East Bay in Northern California. A's hats, A's shirts, A's paraphernalia, all that stuff is just going to kind of fade off into the sunset, because this area is definitely not going to support a franchise that relocates to Southern Nevada. It's not going to be like a Raiders situation. There's no question about that for me. And so it is kind of watching something become extinct right in front of your eyes. And I think that's the sad part to me. People in Las Vegas have connected with me on social media, and they say, if it's been so bad, if the A's have been, not great in the community in terms of, making their fans happy and really trying to win, then why do you want to keep them? Well, fans here only want to keep the team. They don't want to keep all that other stuff that has come along with it.
As they should. That's their team. They definitely should. I share memories all the time of going through the Coliseum with my grandfather, with my parents. Just love the Coliseum, especially before '95 when it all switched up and the Raiders returned. And we'll close out with this. The thing that really struck me the most, Brody, is the whole hashtag rooted in Oakland. What did that all, at the end of the day, even mean?
And that's the hard part when Rob Manfred says a couple days ago that there was no plan and there was no site in Oakland. The A's literally said Howard Terminal or bust. And to your point, the slogan even before that was rooted in Oakland. And the team had proclaimed that they had spent $100 million in trying to get this site to work. And for the commissioner to just pretend like it never even happened and sweep it under the rug, it's unbelievable. And it's not just a slogan that came to be, 5 or 6 years ago. That slogan is literally plastered on the walls of the Coliseum right now. It still exists. And if you're going to say that, and if you're not going to try every last thing to actually stand up to your word, then I don't know what it ever meant, quite honestly. Were you just saying it for marketing? Were you saying it for influencing? Because if you didn't actually mean your words, then shame on all of us, I guess, for believing that. And I think that's the hardest part to understand. It's the most frustrating thing. Again, of all the things I don't understand, they tried to do a whole development at this place called Howard Terminal, just north of Jack London Square. A very good platform and opportunity, 55 acres to build a brand new ballpark. Well, now it turns out in Las Vegas, they don't need that whole community surrounding the ballpark. All they're trying to do is get free land, free public money, build a ballpark on 9 acres, put a roof on it, and call it a day. And I think that's what people here feel upset about, is something so specific was necessary in Oakland, but in Las Vegas, they'll take whatever they can get and run away from here.
Could have got that in Oakland.
They could have. They definitely could have.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And, Brody, we can go on and talk about this situation. Again, as a Bay Area native, I hate it for the city of Oakland and all the great A's fans out there. But thank you so much for sharing a few minutes of your time and your story and the emotions behind this story with us this afternoon. We definitely appreciate you.
I'd say it's my pleasure. The situation isn't, but talking to you all was. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brody.